Grace, your blessings. Thank you. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Can you hear me okay? Very good. We have this very special honor and privilege this evening to welcome His Grace, Bishop Gregory of Nyssa. That's a very ancient honorific and is very well suited to this beautiful man of God that we have with us. We've been hoping that he would come down and that he would address us as part of the annual Christian Rights and Freedom Institute Speaker Series. And alas, you're here, Your Grace. We're so very thrilled about that. But to say just a few things about His Grace, I'm sure that most of us have read his bio that we've been publishing in the bulletin. It was published online. And certainly much has been said about His Grace, the fact that he's not only a bishop of our church, and to be specific, of the American Carpatho-Russian Orthodox Church, but that he is a scientist by training, a biologist with patents to his name in the field of vascular science and vascular medicine. Something that does not appear in his bio is the fact that since he was selected and then elevated as the hierarch of his church, a beautiful icon of the Theotokos has been weeping. It's in its 7th year, and many, not dozens of miracles, not hundreds of miracles, but even thousands of miracles have been worked through the anointing of the tears from this icon. And as a result, the icon, which is in Taylor, Pennsylvania, is oftentimes sought after and invited to go and make visitations, but the answer is not always yes for this request. I'm very happy to say that at lunch today we asked His Grace, would it be possible to have this beautiful myrrh-streaming and weeping icon of the Theotokos visit our St. Katherine Church? And we're so humbled that you said yes. And we believe that these type of signs and wonders in our age, they remind us not that there is a dichotomy between science and theology, but simply to say that this world that we live in is perhaps more strange and more difficult to understand and more beautiful in the way that God has created it than we could ever really imagine. That prayer really does matter. Faith matters. And the power of the Eucharist is something that we can never deny. It is our distinct pleasure to welcome this evening His Grace, Bishop Gregory of Nyssa. And you may speak as long as you like, Your Grace. The presentation will be live streamed. You may see that there's a camera in the back there. It'll be live streamed. It will also be recorded and then later posted to our website. And at the end, we will also offer the opportunity, if you have questions that you may think of as he's speaking. The topic that he'll be speaking on is, of course, relates to the theme of Christian rights and freedom. And he may modify it a bit, so I'm not going to give you the title. You may give it whatever title that you wish. And we say only welcome. So wonderful to have you. Thank you so much.
I want to thank His Eminence Metropolitan Alexios of Atlanta for giving his blessing and permission to speak here this evening. In addition, I want to thank Father Philemon Petitsis for the invitation to join you. He and I were at seminary together for 1 year. I was a senior, he came in as a newbie, and so we have this experience. When he was ordained a priest, he was assigned to the cathedral in Charlotte, which was my home parish. I grew up in that parish, and so we have a connection there, of course. And so I wanted to thank you for the invitation, and also to the leadership and the members of this organization that has asked me to come so that I can have this opportunity to share and encourage you, and for you to encourage me in our daily struggles of human liberty and religious freedom, and some other things that will come up. First, a few definitions that we should try to understand. Human liberty. It is the quality and state of being free, the power to do what one pleases, freedom from physical restraint, freedom from arbitrary or despotic control, the positive enjoyment of various social, political, economic rights and privileges. Freedom of religion is defined in this way: the right to choose a religion or no religion without interference by the government. Freedom of religion is guaranteed by the First Amendment to the Constitution. This First Amendment to the U.S. Constitution prevents Congress from making any law respecting an establishment of religion, prohibiting the free exercise of religion, or abridging the freedom of speech, or the freedom of the press, or the right to peaceably assemble, or to petition for governmental redress of grievances. This is the First Amendment. We should know this by heart. We want to be American. It was adopted on December 15th in the year 1791. This country had just been a country for just a few years. And the Constitution, which was a beautiful document, needed some amending. And they added these things to make it clear. And this first one of the 10 amendments helped to constitute part of the Bill of Rights. Religious liberty, freedom of religious opinion and worship. Now some additional history, so we have a firm foundation. In the year 1786, Thomas Jefferson's Virginia Statute for Religious Freedom guaranteed the citizens the freedom from government interference in their right to worship. The statute tore down state-sponsored denominations and was the basis for the creation of the First Amendment. Jefferson, who was the third president of the United States and one of the authors of the Declaration of Independence, laid the foundation of our right to worship God without threat of governmental suppression, of our inalienable right of conscience. I think we all know this. Then, in 1791, James Madison's 10 amendments to the Constitution were ratified and further protected individual liberties by limiting the government power over religion. And the first of these amendments was known as the Establishment Clause, which guaranteed individual religious liberty, proclaiming, quote, again, Congress shall not make no law respecting establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof, and abridging the freedom of speech or the press or the right of the people peaceably to assemble and to petition the government for a redress of grievances. I've said it twice now. You must understand that I believe it's important. Despite the claims by some people that Thomas Jefferson's reference to a wall of separation between church and state was proof positive that our founding father meant to keep God separate from governmental issues, the walls of our national monuments prove otherwise and attest to America's early reliance on the God of Abraham and Isaac and Jacob to provide guidance to our young nation. God has always been part of the equation in this country's history. President Trump, religious liberties executive order is an affirmation of the present-day significance of the Bill of Rights. This order was signed on the National Day of Prayer last year, and it directs the IRS from taking, quote, adverse action, close quote, against tax-exempt religious organizations or churches who may speak politics in the pulpit. Although the order does not change the essence of the 1954 Johnson Amendment, which restricts tax-exempt organizations from specifically endorsing a particular candidate, Trump called for an end to the federal government's threat against pastors and priests and imams with the loss of their tax-exempt status as a result of doctoral sermons. It was the day before the election, back in 2016, actually 2 days, on that Sunday. I spoke at the cathedral in Johnstown, that's my hometown, about the importance of American citizens to go to the polling place and to vote. I didn't tell them who to vote for. In fact, I said it 3 times. I'm not going to tell you who to vote for. And even if I could tell you who to vote for, I wouldn't. It's not my right to tell you who to vote for. All I can tell you is that I'm going to go across the street, that's where my polling place is, and I'm going to vote. And a lot of people voted that day. It is a duty as citizens to either vote or not vote. It's okay if you choose not to vote. But you have to remember that in some countries they wish they could vote, and they can't. And if we don't vote, one day we won't be able to either. It is a duty and a right as a citizen to choose who they want their leaders to be. According to the Heritage Foundation, 53% of Americans say that their political affiliation has been influenced by issues of religion. And there's proof of this because we saw in the presidential election of 2016, which was fueled by evangelicals who opposed the Supreme Court decision that redefined marriage and the loss of autonomy when making business decisions that might compromise one's spiritual conviction. You know what I'm talking about, making cakes and selling flowers. Though mostly symbolic, the new order from the president has been met with overall approval from religious groups who are encouraged by the new administration's promise to uphold religious freedom against those whose agenda is to limit religious freedom in the name of tolerance. Each week, under the direction of the pastor Ralph Dollinger, the White House plays host to a prayer meeting sponsored by Vice President Mike Pence and CIA Director Mike Pompeo and others. Even those who claim no religious affiliation or practice recognize the importance of a government who protects individual freedoms. And they are encouraged by Trump's presence and promise that his administration will, quote, protect and vigorously promote religious freedom. People of faith are rallying against laws that would promote anti-American agendas, and specifically those that are at odds with the Constitution. That document protects all of us. Doesn't matter what color your skin is, doesn't matter what religious group you're in, if any, it protects you as a human being. And so we need to be conscious of that and the importance of it. Our founding fathers were very strong in their beliefs. They put together a beautiful document that has survived now for almost 250 years and is the envy of all other countries in the world that wish they had a document as strong as ours. In the White House dining room, where they have the big state dinners when they invite some big wig from somewhere, at the fireplace there is a little plaque And that little plaque reads this way, quote, "I pray heaven to bestow the best of blessings on this house and on all that shall hereafter inhabit it. May none but honest and wise men ever rule under this roof." That's what the plaque says. Oh, if our leaders could just aspire to be honest and wise men. All of them have fallen short, past and present. They are human beings, just like you and me. Religious freedom and liberty also has impact on our children. Over the past several decades, the Supreme Court has upheld several key religious legal cases in favor of the Boy Scouts of America on the basis that they are a private organization. Despite the wins, the organization has made sweeping changes to their policy to appease those opposed to the Boy Scouts' long-standing, quote, duty to God culture. In 2013, the organization began accepting homosexual youth members, and in 2015 lifted a ban that prohibited gay adults from filling leadership positions. In 1993, the Girl Scouts allowed a change in their official oath when the promise to, quote, serve God was made optional, and the name of God was left blank in the oath to allow for the placement with another deity. Not God, but somebody else. Although some saw these changes as progressive, many felt betrayed. These decisions helped pave the way for the creation of new organizations. The American Heritage Girls, which adhere to the governance from a Judeo-Christian perspective. Far from being intolerant, they promote a biblical worldview while teaching compassion for others and respect for others' beliefs. For the boys, there's something called the Trail Life USA, and it offers a wholly Christian alternative in line with the objectives of their families. These alternative options are being embraced by numerous denominations across the United States, including the Catholic Church, the National Lutheran Association, and the Churches of Christ. Our future. America's history of religious liberty has been long and hard fought. It has been marked by successes for the religious fulfillment when in 1956, quote, "In God we trust," close quote, was adopted as the phrase of our national motto. But there has also been loss as well. In 1962, there was a ruling that removed this simple prayer from our schools, quote, "Almighty God, we acknowledge our dependence on Thee and beg Thy blessing over us, our parents, our teachers, our nation." Close quote. The argument can be made that there has been a rapid moral decline within the family, the national school system, and throughout the nation since that time, 1962. I pray that we will continue to have a reawakening of religious freedom that spreads to the hearts and minds of the citizens of our great country, and that the elected officials that we vote for, they work for us, don't work for them, will protect the liberties entrusted to all Americans by our founding fathers. First the Saturday people, then the Sunday people. This portion of my presentation has to do with the exodus of Jews and Christians from the Middle East. You may not have heard that phrase before. Let me tell you about it. It is a phrase not often heard outside the majority Muslim world. And it is, quote, "First the Saturday people, and then the Sunday people. Close quote. The Saturday people are, of course, the Jews. That is their day of worshiping. The Saturday people were once a vibrant community in many countries throughout the region, and now they've been decimated. In 1948, there were roughly 150,000 Jews in the country of Iraq. Today, there are less than 10 Jews in the country of Iraq. Not 10,000, 10. They will die if they haven't already. In Egypt, there was once as many as 80,000 Jews. Now less than 100 remain. They have a woman in charge of an organization that keeps tabs on who's left. Most of them are widows in their 80s and 90s. It appears that a similar fate may await the ancient Christian communities in these same lands. Between 1948 and 1970, between 80,000 and 100,000 Jews were expelled from Egypt. Their properties and their funds were confiscated. Their passports were seized and destroyed. They left stateless and with little more than the shirts on their backs to show for centuries within the Egyptian citizenship that was theirs. And since the fall of Hosni Mubarak, Coptic Christians, numbering roughly 8 to 10 million, are leaving in droves. Since the revolution there, their future in the country has looked uncertain, and many are resettling in the United States. Hundreds of thousands of them have come here. Their population has grown by nearly 30%, according to some estimates. Similarly, in Iraq, the Christian population has fallen from as many as 1.4 million in 2003 to roughly 500,000 in 2013. That's 5 years ago. Even more have left. Churches have been targeted. Believers have been kidnapped for ransom. Families have been threatened with violence if they stay. Over the span of a few decades, the Middle East, with the exception of Israel, has virtually been emptied of the Jews. Now, Syrian Christian refugees, Lebanese Christians, and Coptic Christians in Egypt are making the same sounds, that the same fate awaits the people of Sunday, the Christians. While it remains to be seen whether the historic exodus of Christians from the region will prove to be as dramatic as has already occurred to the Jewish community, it is without question devastating, as it threatens to erase Christianity from its very roots. A recent study on Christian persecution released by the London-based think group Civitas found that parts of the media have been influenced by the logical error that equates criticism of Muslims with racism, and therefore as wrong by definition. This has further distracted attention away from the hounding of Christians, helping to cement the misunderstanding and surprisingly widespread idea that Christianity is a Western faith. This idea cannot be further than the truth. The Middle East is the very cradle of Christianity. Christ was born there. He grew up there. He taught there for 3 years. The state executed him there. His disciples put him in a tomb there. 3 days later, he came back to life there. Walked around for 40 days with people that knew him. And then 40 days later, he ascended into heaven there. If that's not the cradle of Christianity, I don't know what is. And it's being emptied out of the believers. It is becoming intolerant to be a believer in the Holy Lands. Consider Iraq for a minute. With the exception of Israel, the Bible contains more references to the cities and regions and nations of ancient Iraq than any other country. The patriarch Abraham, the father of the Jews, the Christians, the Muslims, three faiths from one guy, came from a city in Iraq called Ur. Isaac's bride, Rebekah, came from northwestern Iraq. Jacob spent 20 years in Iraq, and his sons, the 12 tribes of Israel, were born in northwestern Iraq. A remarkable spiritual renewal, as told in the book of Jonah, occurred in Nineveh, Iraq. The events of the book of Esther took place in Iraq, as did Daniel in the lion's den. Furthermore, many of Iraq's Christians still speak Aramaic, the language of Christ. The ones that are left. In Egypt, 2,000 years ago, Mary, Joseph, and the baby Jesus sought refuge in that land from the murderous aim of King Herod. Egypt's Coptic community traces its roots to the Apostle Mark. They've been there for 2,000 years. As it appears to be happening, the Middle East is effectively being emptied of the Christian faith. This will have grave geopolitical implications and does not bode well for the prospects of pluralism and democracy in the region, which is especially disquieting in the aftermath of the, quote, Arab Spring. Christian leaders in the West must continually speak out about what is happening, not only in Syria, or if you're not familiar with the war in Syria that's been going on for over 6 years now, there aren't two sides fighting each other. The last time I counted, there were 6 different sides fighting each other. Today, I'm with you. Tomorrow, I'm not. You're with the Americans. I hate you. You're a Kurd. Turkey hates you. But Turkey and America are allies, NATO members. Oh, the Russians are there? Who are they against? Well, they had it out with the Turks for a while. The Turks shot down one of their jets and created chaos, and now they've kissed and made up. They're just trying to kill the terrorists. Who are the terrorists? I don't know. Who are the rebels? I don't have a clue. Where are the weapons going? I don't know who's got them today, but people continue to die in the cities, sometimes with chemicals, sometimes with bullets, sometimes with barrel bombs from the sky. Little children destroyed. For what reason? Because grown men cannot figure out how to be at peace with each other. Not only in Syria, but in the Mideast and other parts of South Central Asia. Christian leaders from the Middle East need to be brought to the United States so they can meet with our church leaders here and make the case for a greater engagement from the faith communities in the West. That includes us. We have to engage to bring peace. Because if we don't, what we see now is only the beginning. It will get worse. Trust me on this. We must champion human rights. Every U.S. government official, from the President to the Secretary of State to the young Foreign Service officer serving in Cairo or Beirut, must be a champion of the cause of human rights, including religious freedom, in their interactions with all government officials and civil society actors. Not simply paying lip service to those foundational American principles, but seeing that they are fully integrated into U.S. foreign policy at every turn. In 1987, on Constitution Day, Ronald Reagan described the United States Constitution as, quote, a covenant that we have made not only with ourselves, but with all of mankind, close quote. We have an obligation to keep that covenant with the fearful Coptic Christians and the displaced Syrian refugee. In December of last year, the archons of the Ecumenical Patriarchate, of which there are a few archons here, I believe, held their third international conference on religious freedom in Washington, D.C. It followed the first one in 2010 in Brussels, Belgium, and the second one in 2013 in Berlin, Germany. I was fortunate to attend the second one in Germany. All of these conferences were extraordinary, historic, watershed events, much needed, where you had people of faith meeting with world representatives of human rights, of religious freedom, of government officials, in an attempt to try to put this to rest. Here's a quote from His All Holiness Ecumenical Patriarch Bartholomew. The targeting of Christians can never be justified in the name of any religious creed or conviction. What we are witnessing is the uprooting not only of a religious minority, but of an entire civilization. The extermination of women and children for any reason whatsoever, much more so in the supposed name of religious conviction, is the elimination of the future. If you kill the women and kill the children, there will be no future. It must be characterized as nothing less than genocide. That's what we're facing. The conference in Washington had some sessions that included the history of the Christian church, the persecution of Christians and possible solutions, freedom of religion and the press, and then sacred sites and property rights. I'm sure you remember in the last 10 years or so that religious sites of that part of the world being destroyed in a senseless way. It didn't even matter what religion. It might be a monastery of the Christians. It might be a Buddha on the side of the wall of a mountain. It might be a synagogue. It might even be a Muslim temple. Didn't matter. We must erase everything that came before us. That's insane. History is history. You cannot erase it. You could try. Many have tried to do it. But in the attempt to do it, you only look foolish to those who go, wow, really? That bothered you so much that you had to destroy it? That some artifact of history that's 7,000 years old, that's not even a religious item, we must destroy it because there were people 7,000 years ago who created it, and they need to be eliminated from history. History begins today with us. That's insanity. And yet that's what we're dealing with. My belief is that if Christians in the Holy Lands and the Middle East are being persecuted, I personally am being persecuted. You, sir, are personally being persecuted. You, ma'am, are personally being persecuted. You, sir, are personally being persecuted. That all of us are being persecuted. They are our brothers. All religious people. I'm not talking just about Christians. I'm talking about anybody who believes in some deity. He has the right to believe and to worship any way they want. If it's a stone, worship the stone. I don't care. But I want you to worship whatever you believe. Now try to convince me to worship the stone and I'll say, no thank you. Can I try to convince you that there's something other than the stone? Maybe. I'm Greek. The ancient Greeks had 12 major gods and multiple minor gods. And growing up as a child, you're Greek? Do you believe in Zeus? Well, yeah, in our mythology, but not really. I'm sort of a Jesus person. The freedom to choose your belief system, if any, must be paramount. Here are a few facts. While about 30% of the world's population identifies as Christian, 80% of all acts of religious discrimination is directed toward Christians. 30%, but you get 80% of the harassment. That source is the International Society for Human Rights. Christians face persecution in more than 60 countries worldwide. U.S. State Department. Between the year 2007 and 2014, Christians have been targeted for harassment in more countries than any other religious group. That's Pew Research. Millions of Christians face interrogation, arrest, torture, and or death because of their religious convictions and their cultural or ethnic identification. The source is Open Doors USA. Christian responses to persecution are almost always nonviolent, and very few examples. They do not involve acts of terrorism. The source is known as Under Caesar's Sword. You may be familiar. I don't know if your local paper had it, but if you read the Wall Street Journal or New York Times or any of the magazines that come out on a weekly basis in the last 3 weeks, we've seen the closure of the Holy Sepulchre in Jerusalem, the location of Christ's crucifixion and burial. That church was closed by the three leaders of the Christian world. And it has been reopened after several days. Why? The political persecution has reached a critical point. The whole thing revolves around the greed for back taxes by the Israeli government. They want over $100 million in back taxes. What? They are within some Christian properties for 99-year leases. The Israeli Knesset, I believe their Supreme Court, I believe the Holocaust Museum are properties of Christian denomination that have been leased to them for 99 years. Some of the people in the political world are saying, yes, but when those leases run out in 2050, we're just going to take them. That's seizure of property. I believe that the churches will have something to say. And their first salvo was to close the Church of the Holy Sepulchre. Israel depends on tourism dollars. You shut down the Christian sites, nobody's going to make a pilgrimage to a closed church. So very quickly they realized, politically, the Prime Minister, Netanyahu, had to step in, put this to rest. It's an intimidation. There's bribery involved. Extreme antisocial behavior in an attempt to make money, but to force Christians and others out of Jerusalem. Enough already. Enough. What can we do about all this? As Christians, we're in pretty bad shape. Here's some information so you'll know what I'm talking about. There's a book that just came out. The author's name is Phil Cook. There's a foreword by Eric Metaxas. You may know Eric. He's on Fox News, a reporter, but he's written several books of his own. He's of Greek descent, so I claim him as a brother, even though I've never met the man. He wrote the foreword to this book. It's entitled The Way Back: How Christians Blew Their Credibility and How We Can Get It Back. And this is just in the first part of the book. A regular church member is someone who attends church 3 out of 8 Sundays. 3 out of 8 Sundays. In other words, in 1 year, 19 out of 52 weeks of a year. You're a regular Christian. That's 36.5%. In any school, any test with a 36.5% would be an F. So as regular Christians, we are F in church attendance. 63% of Christians believe prayer is essential. 37% believe that prayer is non-essential. 37% non-essential. But only 63% say that prayer is essential. In any school, on any test, 63% is an F. So we're blowing it on prayer. Church attendance, F. Prayer, F. 40% of Christians rarely or never read Holy Scripture. That love letter that God has sent us, that we have had for a long time. And that Old Testament is the history of the Jewish nation. You know, Jesus was a Jew. Some people doubt me when I say that. I say, well, was he a Greek? He was a Jew. His mother was a Jew. His foster parent was a Jew. His early believers, followers, were Jews. And then add the New Testament, but hey, only 40% rarely or never read it. That means 60% read some. In any school, on any test, 60% would be an F. Church attendance, F. Prayer life, F. Reading Scripture, F. That's why they say we have lost, blown our credibility. Now, where do we find ourselves? Where are you in all this? Where am I in all this? All 3 of those things are failing grades. If we don't improve on these 3 things, my friends, and I don't care what faith denomination you are, I don't even care if you're not Christian on this point. If you're not reading the sacred text of your faith, you are not an active member of that faith. You're just not. I'm not judging you. I'm just telling you how it is. I'm a biologist by training, as Father said. Those numbers should scare us. And so we've lost our credibility. So what can we do? Why do we not have a voice when we see what's going on in other parts of the world? Nobody cares about us. We don't care about us. We don't care about our God. We don't care about that beautiful book that He gave us, that love letter that's known as the Holy Bible. We don't pray to Him. That's just talking to your Father. In an informal way, in a formal way, together in church, in a group, we're praying. We're worshiping our God. We're thanking Him for all those beautiful things He gave us this week, like this weather today. I live in Pennsylvania. It's been cold and snowing all winter. I come here and I go, oh, there is a spring. There are flowers. I'm not going to have flowers till June. And that's if I buy them at the Walmart. I'm thankful when I go to church. And I ask my Father for those things that I need. And you know, He knows what you need before you know what you need. But you have to ask. What child just gets it from the parents without asking? None. You got to learn to ask mom and dad for everything. Can I have a cookie? No. We're getting ready to have dinner. Please? Okay, have one, but don't tell your mother that I gave it to you. And then they get a little bit older. Can I go out and play with my friends? Be careful, but come back before it's dark. You have to ask. And then you turn 16 and you get your driver's license and you want the car. You don't have a job, so you need gas money. Can I have $20 for gas? If I trust you as my child, I might give it to you. But if I don't trust you as my child because you have just been a terror from the very moment you were born until you became 16, I don't trust you, you're never going to get the car. But you have to ask. So we have to ask God for what we want. What do we need? That's why we go to church. You can do it by yourself, but you know what? In communities we need things. Wouldn't it be better if God saw all of us as a community praying and saying, Lord, extend your hand. We're tired of the violence in the American streets. Please, calm the waters. That would be impactful if we could get together and pray together in whatever church we're in, whatever synagogue we're in, whatever Muslim temple we're in. Pray for peace. Remember, Abraham is the father of all three of those religions. He's hearing us when we talk to him, but it looks like some people don't even think it's essential. Well, I'm going to let him figure those out. I'm going to keep trying to pray. I'm not perfect. I have my weaknesses just like everybody. But we got to engage the faiths, my friends. We just got to. We must attend church services, we must pray, and we must read Scripture. And then there are other things too. We got to get these three right. For the Christians, we are in the period of the calendar known as Great Lent. Protestants and the Catholics are one head of the Orthodox, 1 week ahead of us. We're not going to criticize you. We just want to let you know that you're 1 week early. We are on the right schedule. Last year, when our Pascha, our Easter, was 5 weeks after the Protestants and the Catholics, you guys were 5 weeks early. We're always on the right calendar. The advantage for the Orthodox when we're not on the same week with the Catholics and the Protestants, Monday after your Easter, jelly beans, 90% off. Chocolate bunnies with no ears, 50% off. As a child, I didn't even know that bunnies had ears. I kept getting the ones with the broken ears, 50% off. This period of Great Lent, for all of us, is a period of reflection. It's 40 days, and then Holy Week comes. What are we reflecting on? We should reflect on all of our relationships. What's my relationship with God? What's my relationship with Jesus Christ? What's my relationship with the Virgin Mary, the Mother? What's my relationship with my guardian angel? What's my relationship with my patron saint? What's my relationship with my spouse? What's the relationship between me and my children? Or me and my siblings? What is that relationship between me and my neighbor, my co-worker, my colleagues, my schoolmates, my classmates? What's my relationship in my neighborhood with the neighborhood next to me? How about my city with the other cities that are around me? How about if you just got the state of Florida on one page? Then you can talk to Georgia to the north, Alabama to the west. And then you three states could get it together and talk to the rest of the South. And then the South could get it right. Then you can talk to the people in the mid-Atlantic, in the north. And then the Midwest. And the West. I didn't forget the mountains, but, there's so few of them. And then once the United States has looked at its relationships internally, then it can talk to the Canadians, our neighbor. You can talk to the Mexicans, our neighbor. And once those three great countries can get their acts together, then we can talk to any other continent. We can show the way when we have created peace in our lives. We can go to the Middle East and say, hey, here is the way to do it. Talk to each other. Put down your guns. We can't criticize them and say, well, there's only war in the Middle East. Really? Ask the people that died in Chicago last year what their war has been like. For what? Spilling of blood for what? That those Coptic Christians are on the beach, on their knees, and the masked guys behind them with a sword to cut off their heads because they are Christians. Did you look at the videos? They videoed this stuff. Some of them were smiling. Not the executioner, the guy on his knees. He was saying prayers. He knew he was going to meet his Lord. He was dying for the faith. He didn't die because he was a Cop. He died because he was a Coptic Christian. That's why they died. In one case. How about that guy that we saw that was a pilot in the first days of the war? He was a Christian. They put him inside of a cage and poured gasoline on him and lit him on fire, alive. For what? To show how brutal you can be to your fellow man? When I saw that, I went, wow. It reminds me of a bishop of the church. In the book of Revelation, you can find where Antipas, the priest, in one of the 7 churches, look it up, they put him inside of a brass bull and put him over a fire and roasted him alive in front of his congregation. To discourage them, he became a martyr of the church. He became a saint of the church. His flock was strengthened by his. The church grows with the martyr's blood. That's what we see right now. Christians are dying around the world. The Vatican said it's about 100,000 a year. That's a lot of dead people. And we don't even know their names. But they died for Christ. And so they are martyrs of the church. They will make it to paradise. What about us? I hope that it never comes to us. I don't hope that someone comes through the door in your church with a weapon to take out people who are praying to God. And yet we've seen it. South Carolina, we've seen it in Texas, and we've seen it in Egypt on Christmas Day, on Palm Sunday. The enemy doesn't care. But if we're praying, talking to God, and we're reading the Scriptures, reading His love letter to us, attending services together doesn't matter. Your way of death does not matter. You can drown, you can be hit by a bus, you can be shot by a bullet, you can have your head chopped off with a sword. Doesn't matter. All of that is irrelevant. What matters is, where is your soul going to end up? Paradise or hell? That. Went to seminary for 4 years. It comes down to that point where I'm in front of the Lord on Judgment Day, and He judges me, along with the others who have been before me and those who are coming now and who will come in the future. There are 7 billion of us on the planet right now, they say. And National Geographic says about 108 billion have come before us. That's 115 billion people in front of Christ one day to be judged. How much time do you think you have, my friends? Do you think you'll be able to bring your defense attorney with you? Do you think you'll be 4 or 5 of those office boxes? You know how they do. You've seen them on TV. They're going in and out of the courtrooms with a case. Oh, come on, Judge. I mean, look at all these papers. I mean, this man is innocent. No. In less than the blink of an eye, He will see you and He will judge you. And by the way, He's the only judge. So if you've been doing any judging, get off that. That's not your job. He's the only judge, the only court, the Supreme Court, and He's the chief judge. He decides based on whatever criteria He has. Now, if the criteria are so small that it's only this high of a threshold, I'm stepping in, guys. I'm over the top. But if the criteria is a 10-foot wall, I'm in so much trouble, I'll never get over unless I'm helped. And where does that help come from? From each other. That's why we have to be together. Solo Christians don't make it. We have to work together so that we will have a chance. No guarantees. I'm not offering a guarantee here. It's totally up to Him. But if you don't work on it, you'll never get to paradise. And that's your number one goal. If your number one goal is to marry the prettiest woman, the most handsome husband, to have a really nice house with 3-car garage, swimming pool in the backyard, a 401k to kill for, enough gold and stocks to really not care. If that's your number one goal, change it right now. Your number one goal is to get to paradise. Those other things can be like goal number 2, 3, 5, 10, I don't care. Because when you die, and you're going to die, is there anybody here that doesn't think you're going to die? Go ahead and throw your hand up. We'll talk about it right now. I don't see any hands, so I'll keep going. You're going to die, and they're going to bring you to the church in a box. Now, it can be a $2,000 box. It might be a $5,000 box. It could be a $10,000 box. Get the cheapest one. It's a box. It is not your responsibility to educate the children of the undertaker. Billy Graham was buried in Charlotte the other day in a wooden box that cost $100, made by prisoners in Louisiana 10 years ago. Get one of those. Get several and get a discount on them. Maybe get them at $85 a piece. That's what we need to worry about. Don't go to cremation. That's another story. That's not something the Orthodox do. So, figure it out. Try. Make it happen. Because in paradise, you will find God. You will find Christ. You will find His mother. Your patron saint will be there. Your guardian angel will be there. All those people that we said we loved in our lives, who are really holy people, might be there. And your favorite sports team wins every year in paradise. Every year. Doesn't matter whether you're football, basketball, soccer, highlight. You guys have that down here. Doesn't matter. But if you don't end up in paradise, you're going to be in a cold, dark place where there's pain, sorrow, suffering, tears, the stench of rotting meat, and death. There's no God, no Christ, no Virgin Mary, no patron saint, no guardian angel, none of those people that we love, that we think we'll find in paradise with us, hopefully if we get there. Nobody there but the devil and his demons and everybody else that went to hell. Choose. Choose wisely. And then work towards that. Again, no guarantees. I don't know what Christ's level of tolerance of us is. Because we've been pretty bad kids. We're all prodigal sons and prodigal daughters. But we can go back to our Father. He'll take us right in. But you got to ask. Got it. So, the Lenten period, let's finish up with it, and then I'm done and we'll open for questions. There are certain things you got to do. You got to decrease some stuff. We're already halfway. You know, this past Sunday was like halftime. We're in the third quarter now of this game toward Holy Week. You got to decrease the television. Turn it off. Turn off the radio a little bit. You don't need to go see any movies. What's out there anyway? Junk. Try to focus on your spiritual life. Spend the time praying more, reading Scripture more, going to church more. All those things that I talked about. But this year I challenge my church members. Take this little device. It's a beautiful little device. Do all kind of great things with it. Turn it off 1 hour every day. Just turn it off. Oh, Bishop, what if there's an emergency? Please! How many emergencies did you miss in the last 30 years because you had your phone off for an hour? None. Be bold. Turn it off for 2 hours. What I told my people, it was the Lenten challenge. I said, how about if you went home, had dinner, and turned it off until breakfast? Because most of the time, what are we doing? Checking Facebook, checking Instagram, we're checking Twitter, we're checking whatever else nonsense is out there. We're checking emails, a lot of other garbage. But take that time with all that other noise and distractions turned off, sit there in silence. Pray to God. Read Scripture. Listen for Him to talk to you. You might be surprised. You're struggling with something in life. Put it up to Him. Lord, I'm weak. I don't know. I'm confused. Help me. And then all of a sudden it comes. Or it might not come, which means that's an answer too. You're asking the wrong questions. And then get up and go do your work. I know it's tough, especially for our young people. This is their oxygen device. You turn this off, they start gasping for air. You don't believe me? Go home and turn it off. They come to summer camp, we take it away for a week. You can't imagine how many of them turn blue that first hour. Can't have that oxygen device. The world is not going to end if you don't have it. How did we survive before we had this? It's a nice device, really and truly. It's very powerful. It has more computing power than all the computers that put man on the moon in 1969. And we have given it to our children. Are we nuts? They can launch the space shuttle from their bedroom. And we wouldn't even know. And the space shuttle's been retired for about 8 years now. They'll launch it out of the museum. And then the government will knock on your door saying, "Where is your child?" Know that I love you. I pray for you all the time. You may not know me. I may not know you personally, but I pray for the collective. As my job as a bishop, I'm supposed to pray for the flock and to lead it to paradise. I may not make it there, but my job is to get everybody else there. All the souls that I encounter in my ministry are my responsibility, even for 1 hour. And so when Judgment Day comes, see it pinged. I hope it's the Lord. It's my sister, and it's not the Lord. Made me laugh. That's great. I even forgot what I was saying. What was I saying? Does anybody remember? Doesn't matter. It's irrelevant, probably. That my job is to lead everyone to paradise. At Judgment Day, I will be judged for my soul and for all the souls I encountered in my ministry. You're responsible for your soul. And the priest is responsible for all the souls he encounters in his life. That's serious business. I take my job seriously. I wouldn't say these things unless I cared. I care. All things are not lost. They're dark sometimes, and they might even get darker. We're in a pretty bad place spiritually in the world, in our country. A lot of blood being spilled. If we don't ask God to extend his hand and calm it down, it's going to get worse. Evil has a way of growing on itself. And we're in a spiritual war with evil. If you don't believe me, then I'm sorry I wasted 1 hour of your time tonight, or whatever time it is. But know there's someone always looking to trip you up. His name in Greek is diabolos, devil. He doesn't care. He knows he's going to lose. In the end, he's not going to make it to paradise, but he wants to take as many people with him as he can. Don't be a victim. Fight. Tell him no. When you're tempted, tell him no. When he's on your shoulder whispering in your ear, tell him no. Don't think evil of other people. Think only positive things. We are believers of Jesus Christ. Most of us in this room, I think. But even if you're not a Christian, but you are of another faith group, you have a God. And I know there are sacred texts for that. Engage the faith, whatever it is. I wouldn't recommend Satanism, just for the record. But anything else might be okay. I'm going to stop now. I'll take any questions. If you don't have any questions, that's fine. If you need to go, go. But whatever you do, go in peace. Go safely. Remember, it's the third quarter in the Christian world, and if you're one of those Protestants or Catholics, you're late into the third quarter. We just started ours. But there's still time to do what needs to be done. Okay? Thank you for your attention this evening. Well, I wouldn't stand up.
Just a few comments I'm going to
Yeah. I realize that you're just stretching your legs. You can sit down now.
We will take, of course, questions, but I just want to say, first of all, thank you, Your Grace. So wonderful to have you here this evening. And, of course, this is our 4th year of sponsoring this annual speaker series for the Christian Rights and Freedom Institute. And the Christian Rights and Freedom Institute is a Christian, private, donor-supported educational and advocacy organization bearing witness to God's love on the current moral and ethical challenges of our day. It's a ministry of St. Catherine, but we extend and offer it to all, especially on religious liberty, the UN's Universal Declaration on Human Rights, on persecution, and on genocide. So your talk was right in the sweet spot of those topics we focus on. We envision a world where all people are respected as being created in the image and likeness of God, as it says in Genesis 1:26-27. And the Institute was founded in 2014 in response to the invasion of Mosul, Iraq, as a means of opposing and stopping the ensuing genocide. It sponsors an annual speaker series, and we culminate each year with a National Christian Rights and Freedom Symposium. We do want to present you, Your Grace, with this icon of St. Catherine. We hope that you will never forget us. We'll certainly never forget you. And a short inscription on the back. It says Christian Rights and Freedom Institute, March 13, 2018, St. Catherine, Naples, Florida. Your Grace, Bishop Gregory of Nyssa, thank you for delivering such a powerful message on religious liberty. You are, as we said in the advertisement in the paper, our lion of orthodoxy. And we pray your voice will be forever magnified as you peacefully uplift Christ. Always agape. Father Philemon and the Christian Rights and Freedom Institute. Thank you, Your Grace. Thank you. And then finally, I also just want to present you on my trip to the Holy Lands. I was able to take a number of bundles of the 33 candles that are lit inside the tomb of Christ, and I know you've had that experience. These are fresh. Perhaps you'll light them this year on Pascha, and think of us as you do. Just be ready with a bucket of water, because the flame's going to be that high. Thank you. So on that note, we will take questions. As long as we have questions, we'll continue with the discussion. Ginny, please.
Yes. Yes, ma'am. Correct. I grew up in Charlotte, which is his hometown. And so I grew up with Billy Graham. As a Greek Orthodox young person, I was always drawn to his sermons that were on TV because he had a message, a simple message. Jesus Christ loves you. Your life's a mess, so you need to get your act together and find Christ. I think there's a lot of reasons. One of them is technologically, you can find anyone you want to listen to on 250 stations on your TV. I didn't say that. I just said they're available. You're correct, only 2 of them are good. And we'll talk about them in a little bit. The fact that you can hear just about anybody in multiple ways, whether it's on TV, on the radio, via the cell phone technologies, your iPad, all these things. When Billy Graham was at his sort of zenith, the beginning of his ministry and then the first probably 30 years, he was the only game in town at that level. There were 3 stations, CBS, NBC, ABC, public broadcasting, the 4th one, but you never was on that. I read in some of the materials that actually in some of the major markets, he actually bought the hour on all 3 stations. I didn't know this. What does that mean? Billy Graham is going to be on from 8 to 9, and you have no other option except to turn off the TV. But if you turn it on, he's going to be on. Very clever. I don't know that we will ever have anyone like that again. For one, he was very, in a minute amount, painted. So many of our televangelists had their scandals, whether it was money issues or sexual impropriety or some passion other than that. So they fell. He sort of had a few controversies, but not enough to really damage the message. And so I don't know that we will have someone like him. I know that we are one day closer today than we were yesterday to the return of Christ. He's probably going to be the next big message deliverer, I believe. There'll be others, but I don't know if they can be as big as Billy Graham. He just was very charismatic in his delivery, and he had a simple message, and he connected with everybody. I mean, he was a forerunner in many ways to to the things that eventually came to America, with laws to stop segregating ourselves. Other things. He didn't sort of jam it down your throat like some guys do. He just offered you the message. You were drawn to it, like a butterfly to a flower. He had very few thorns. I don't want to extend it. But I don't know that we will have another. It's going to be tough. Who did it? I mean, you got to control the airways. He had radio ministry. He had his magazine. Christianity Today is one. Yeah, he was chosen. For the next one? Well, sometimes they don't come. Yeah. Another question? Somebody else? Yes, sir. Yes. Christianity is very tolerant, for sure. No. I mean, we're taught to be accepting of everyone. We were told by Christ to love our neighbor and to love our enemy. Well, you got to be pretty tolerant to love the enemy. He might want to kill you, but you still love him. And so, not all the faith groups have that. There are certain things that are pretty close in all of them. But, you know, in some cases, people are using the faith to accomplish other things that have nothing to do with their faith. You can use religion to control people. Yes, ma'am.
I'm curious what your take is on the Russian Orthodox Church in Russia and Putin and new crackdown on everything about the state. Churches and stuff being underground Russian Orthodox. But I'm wondering how you see it and what.
Let me say this nicely. Mr. Putin, I believe, is an Orthodox Christian. He participates in the life of the church. He has brought the government close to the church in Russia. That could be a good thing or it could be a bad thing. We've seen this through history with the Christian church being close to local governments. It could be a good thing, it could be a bad thing. I'm not sure completely in this case whether it's good or bad. There are many believers in Russia. There have been many believers for 1,000 years. Of course, during the communist era of about 100 years, 90 years, whatever, the church was tolerated, but was also used by the state in various ways. And that's true in many places in history of times. The crackdown is some of the things that they're cracking down on are actually part of the church's understanding of life. And it's just using the church to clean up messes in a political way. I know that there are other Christian groups that try to go into Russia to proselytize the people. They have been successful in some cases. But the Orthodox Church there has used the government to pass some laws to try to make it really tough for them. Like to set up churches, to send in missionaries. It's an Orthodox country. We don't need you to come here and create Christians. They're already Christians.
I have a friend, and I know it's a call, named Jehovah's Witness, and she put on Facebook how they see and there, this and that. I said, well, you know there was a law. Why were they meeting after this law was given to say, look at us, poor people being persecuted? In the Bible, they fled when they were persecuted.
Yeah.
So
well, that's a way of coming apart. I go into the mountain of light.
Woe is me.
Woe is me. Yes, sir.
You talk about the violence that we see in this country and
yes.
genocide and in a way
take globally for a minute, and then I'll come right back to the United States. There are globally 14 churches of the Orthodox world. In the United States, 12 of those 14 are represented. There is an assembly of bishops that meets once a year. All 54 bishops come, are invited, not all come, but they are invited. And we are still struggling with certain things about unity in America. You know, when you say Orthodox Church, and those who are not Orthodox look at you and go, who's in charge? There's like 12 of you here. No, each bishop is in charge of his area. Well, I mean, now you're telling me there's 54 people in charge. What is we're not unified enough to even come up with that political action part in a consistent, regular basis. There are times when the Orthodox hierarchs get together, or local churches get together with their priests, and they make a statement in a political way. But it's not often, and I wonder if they even pay attention to it. We are less than the drop in the bucket, the size of the ocean. We are very small in number as Orthodox. Yes, ma'am.
Excuse me, in our churches, we have heard about the atrocities committed against the Christians in the Middle East.
Yes, ma'am.
But we do not hear anything.
Yeah, is it?
Our religious leaders, and perhaps the Pope, the ecumenical patriarch.
Closer, and maybe just
Why don't you stand with anyone who has a question?
stand closer to the aisle, because people in the front especially could hear one word.
Ask your question again.
Yes.
Okay.
Tell I'm from the South. Ask your question again, honey.
Yeah. In our churches, we have heard about the atrocities committed against the Christians in the Middle East. However, we are not hearing about it very much in the media. Why do our religious leaders, and by that I mean perhaps the Pope, our ecumenical patriarch, the highest of our leaders, why do they not bring it up? As that gentleman said, why do they not use their influence to inform the people? I think there would be outrage if more people were aware about this, and perhaps some solution could be found.
I agree with you. You were talking about the newspapers and the media. They have their agenda, and so it's only, they usually put out what they want to put out, or the amount they want to put out. The fact that every day people are dying for their faith doesn't even register for that. But if a bomb blows up somewhere and 50 non-Christians are killed, it's on the news. So you would think that there was some kind of bias toward Christianity. They don't talk about our problem as much. Who is controlling that? I don't know. But it's definitely clear, if you're sort of unbiasedly looking at things, that we don't get the same sort of things. I mean, the fact that someone walks into a church on Palm Sunday in Egypt and kills a bunch of Coptic Christians should be the lead story that night and the next day of every major newspaper in the world. But if something else happens, it'll be on the front. Just depends on the agendas, what else is going on, who said what. You know, it's a complicated world. I mean, I'm not telling you anything you don't know, but our leaders speak regularly, but not necessarily put out. I mean, if Pope Francis comes to the United States, it's going to be a big story. If Patriarch Bartholomew comes, we'll know about it. There might be one picture, and that might be it. It's not a big story. And yet, they are both world leaders who are actually very good friends and have done some things together for the refugees that are coming out of the Middle East. pronouncements together. But, you know, if it doesn't fit somebody's agenda, it's quiet. And that's sad. But one of the things we can do is, American citizens, is write a letter to the editor of the newspaper. Write a letter to your congressman. Write a letter to your senator. Write a letter to your governor. Write a letter to everyone who is supposed to be working for you. We pay them to do a job for us. And so we just have to be active, because trust me, the other sides of issues are active. They're involved. But we get lazy. And so we have to engage. This is a time to get engaged. In Johnstown, it's a small newspaper. Every year, the local Orthodox day school, I think there are probably 20 students there, from the 6th grade down, they write a letter. Okay? They write a letter asking about those 2 Orthodox bishops who disappeared. How come we don't know after 4 years what happened to them? Where are they? And who they sent letters to? The President of the United States, the Secretary General of the UN, and other world people. These are like elementary school kids who write a letter. And it shows up in the local newspaper, and it goes where? How come we're waiting for the kids to talk? Why can't we as adults do what we need to do? Now the technology is easy now. It's ready. You can email. You don't have to spend the 49 cents to mail it. Just email it to their White House address. Somebody's going to read it. And if enough letters show up saying, hey, what about this? Maybe it will make a dent somewhere.
Did anyone respond?
I'm sorry?
Did anyone respond?
Of course not. Why would they respond? They don't talk to 6th graders. They should be ashamed of themselves. But I see the letter in the newspaper every year, and I send them a letter thanking them for sending the letter. So at least one person is responding.
Okay, we have a question on this side of the room. Dr.
Your Grace, I have a question for you. I just wanted to go back to what you said about the 3 F's: an F in scriptures, an F in praying, and an F in church attendance.
Yes.
I'm thinking of the young people, and what I hear from time to time is that the parables that the church tells are, forgive me, Your Grace, but akin to hocus pocus. And they just don't believe, and they just don't want any part of it. How do we bring them back?
Good question. The largest growing group in the religious world in America specifically are the nuns. N-O-N-E-S. Not the monastics. They are not affiliated. About 35% of that 25 to 35 age group is not affiliated with any religious group. But they say they're spiritual. Not sure what that means. Spiritual what? But we've somehow lost that group. That's across all religious groups. So not specifically Orthodox. This is a national phenomenon. And so we're doing stuff that's been around for 1,700 years, the hocus pocus part, candles, incense, music, vestments, all that kind of stuff. Hasn't changed very much. But in what environment are our children being raised? They go to school, can't pray. Supreme Court said in 1962 no prayer in school. But that's not true. They can pray. The teacher can't keep the prayer. The coach can't keep the prayer. They can keep the prayer. The society is telling us there is no God. They grow up in a society where they see church leaders scandalize the population. And so they say, to go to college, someone can get, $50,000, $60,000, $100,000 in debt. And then they're told that God doesn't exist by their professors. They're challenged when they say, well, I'm not a Christian. Really? You believe in that stuff? So they're ashamed in front of their professors and other students. And so there's this whole negativeness to it that we're losing it. I have always thought, because the stats are, in the Orthodox world, we're losing about 60% of our young. 60% go to college and never return to the Orthodox Church. I don't mean come back to St. Catherine. I mean, they're no longer Orthodox. They're gone. Floated away. And it's even worse, like towards 70 now. What are we doing wrong? What are we not offering to our young people when they're developing from the young kids all the way up to high school that would make them never? What are we doing wrong? What are we not doing? What are we doing incorrectly? I mean, these are questions that sort of been spinning my head for 15 years. I don't know. When we ask them, one of the things they tell us is that I came back from college in this multiple time term. I'm not sure why we would tell us something that we love and educate to come back to the parish. They should immediately be put on the parish councils. They should become Sunday school teachers. They should be in leadership positions because they're the most highly educated at the moment. 10 years from now, that education will not be as valuable. And if we wait long enough, we lose it. Our churches have, I don't know if yours, but I love it. We've got programs for families. Okay? Most parishes have family ministries. Something for the kids. What do you have for the ones that just came out of college? I'm not saying specifically, but just think about it. You come back to the church and there's nothing for you. I mean, yes, I can go to church, I can worship, I can pray, I can hear the hymns, but then what? I want to be engaged. And they're telling us, when we interview them and survey them, and the Assembly Bishops did a real big study on this and released it in October, that they want to be engaged. They want to be involved in mission work. They want to be involved in evangelization, outreach. They want to be part of what Christ taught them. And we have become insular in our communities many times. And we love them, but we don't have anything for them. And so they come. And can we get them back? Oh, they'll show up when it's time to be married. And then they may float away again. Oh, and then that baby will come. They'll show up for the baptism. Then they'll float away again, in many cases. But what can we do that they never float away? That's the big thing. You come up with answers, ideas. That's open to anyone. I mean, the problem has multiple reasons that it's happening, and there have to be multiple reasons to try to fix it. I mean, different ways to fix it. Yes, ma'am. Yes. Of course.
Would you just say that one more time?
I just wondered if we've entered a secular mode.
I bet you when you were growing up as a young lady, everything was closed on Sunday. Blue laws. Nothing was open. A drugstore for emergency medicine prescriptions. McDonald's was closed. The grocery stores were closed. No sports on Sunday. That's a big one. We have to play soccer during liturgy? Are you serious? You have to say no to that. Not just your community. You get together with about 10 other churches that do not want their kids playing sports on Sunday and form your own league and buy your own field and tell the city, take a hike. Because we're losing our kids because we're letting the secular world creep in. And so where's the day of rest? It doesn't exist anymore. It's go, 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 burnout. What? I got to go to church? That's the only day I can sleep late. Is that not what we say? We'd rather sit home and watch monster trucks on one of the 250 channels than go to the church for an hour and a half and receive the Eucharist, the medicine of life. And so you're correct. The secular world has beat us like a rag. We have to fight back. We're part of the society. We live here too.
We certainly want to thank His Grace and all of you for coming this evening, and can we just recognize him together? Yes. Thank you so much, Your Grace. Is it possible we could have a closing prayer and...
We can always do a prayer.
yes, with...
I can't just talk, I got to be able to do it. But I'll do what I do at summer camp at the end of the day. The prayers of our Holy Father, Lord Jesus Christ, our God, have mercy on us and save us. Amen. All right, here's the deal. It doesn't matter how fast you get home, it's that you get home. So take it easy. You don't have to cut in front of that speeding idiot that's out there. I've seen you Florida drivers. You got some weird ones. I mean, really, they're doing bizarre things.